Seattle never stopped raining. The city seemed built from glass and melancholy grey skies pressed low, puddles reflecting towers that looked taller than they really were. Grace Harlow stood under the awning of the Cole and Western building, clutching a paper cup of burnt office coffee. It was her third morning at the new job, and she still hadn't memorized the security code. The air smelled faintly of rain and ink. A line of black umbrellas moved past her like a procession of ghosts. She adjusted the strap of her worn leather bag, took a breath, and stepped inside. The lobby was all marble and silence, every footstep echoing. Grace kept her eyes down as she walked toward the reception desk. "Morning, Miss Harlow," the guard said, polite but indifferent. She smiled automatically, pressed her ID against the reader, and waited for the elevator. It wasn't the first office she'd worked in, but there was something different about this one. The stillness had weight. People spoke in measured tones, their laughter too brief, as if afraid of being overheard. When the elevator doors closed, she caught her reflection in the chrome 33 tired eyes, a loose strand of brown hair falling across her cheek. Not the girl she used to be. Maybe that was the point. Her cubicle sat on the 24th floor, between the legal team and the administrative offices. She liked the distance from the executive wing, new hire. A voice asked behind her. She turned to see Sophie, mid-40s, kind eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. "I'm Sophie Weston, office manager. You've got the desk by the window. If you ever get tired of spreadsheets, the view of Puget sounds good for morale." Grace smiled. "Thanks, I'll keep that in mind." Sophie lingered, lowering her voice. "Word of advice, when Mr. Cole walks through, everyone stands up straighter. Don't take it personally. He's particular." Grace's pen froze mid-air. "Mr. Cole?" Sophie nodded, oblivious. "Adrian Cole, CEO. You'll see him eventually. He's here most mornings." Grace managed a polite nod, but her chest had already tightened. She turned toward the window to hide it. Outside, rain streaked the glass like handwriting she couldn't quite read. The first time she heard his name again, it felt like static under her skin. 10 years had passed since Montana, the summer of wildfire smoke, the nights by the lake. His laugh that could break her resolve and calm it at once. She had spent a decade convincing herself he belonged to another life, one that burned out before it could end. Now he was her boss. By noon, the office smelled of coffee and printer toner. Grace typed mindlessly, entering data from contracts she didn't care to understand. She kept her head down, her pulse steady. If she was careful, she could survive this just another job, just another building. But then came the email from Executive Assistant Cole 2. "Grace Harlow, subject file request Mr. Cole requests that you bring the Hartman contract summary to his office at 1:15 p.m. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. It couldn't be that Cole. Maybe another executive. Maybe someone who just happened to share his last name. But something in her gut already knew. She checked her reflection once more before leaving her desk. Her blouse was neatly pressed, hair tied back, the silver locket at her throat hidden beneath the collar. Her hands shook anyway. The executive floor was quieter, colder. The carpet swallowed footsteps. The air smelled faintly of cedar and polish. She passed portraits of founders, glass cases with awards, until she reached a door marked Adrian Cole, Chief Executive Officer. She knocked once. A deep voice answered, "Come in." He was standing by the window when she entered. Grey suit, crisp lines, no tie. The skyline behind him was a mosaic of rain and fog. He turned, and in an instant, 10 years elapsed into a single breath. Adrian Cole looked older, sharper, but still impossibly familiar. His eyes grey with flecks of green met hers, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Grace's voice almost failed her. "Mr. Cole, Grace," he said quietly. Not as a greeting. As a memory, the room felt smaller then. Her pulse was a drumbeat in her ears. She held the folder tighter, like armor. "You've been here 3 days," he said, finally breaking the silence. "And I only found out this morning." "I didn't," she forced a breath. "I didn't know it was your company." He nodded, slowly, studying her. I almost believed that there was no anger in his tone, only exhaustion. The kind that comes from a decade of unanswered questions. She placed the folder on his desk, fingers brushing the wood. "Here's what you asked for." He didn't look down. "You left without saying goodbye." Her throat tightened. "That was a long time ago. For you, maybe." The words hung between them, heavy as the rain outside. He finally moved, walking to his desk. His office was minimalist steel shelves, a black leather chair, a single framed photo turned face down. "Why are you here, Grace?" he asked quietly. "I needed the job," she said. "Seattle's a big city," he replied. "You could have picked anywhere." She hesitated. "I didn't know I was running toward you." He looked at her then, something flickering behind his calm. "Or maybe you stopped running." Her fingers brushed the silver locket beneath her blouse. She could feel the small photograph inside Theo, at 5 years old, grinning in the sunlight. The secret she'd carried for nearly a decade pulsed against her skin like a heartbeat. "I should go," she whispered. He nodded, but his eyes didn't follow her. "You always do." She turned before the tears could win, leaving the office and closing the door softly behind her. Outside, the rain had turned to mist. Seattle blurred, as if the whole city was pretending not to watch her fall apart that night. When she got home, Theo was sitting on the couch, surrounded by crayons and paper. "Hey, Mom," he said, without looking up. "I drew you something." She smiled weakly. "Yeah. Let me see." He held up a drawing, a tall glass building under a gray sky, a woman with an umbrella standing in front of it. Grace froze. "Theo, where did you see this?" He shrugged. "It's from your picture. The one in your drawer." The photo she'd kept for 10 years, Adrian on the steps of that same building, smiling in the rain when Theo went to bed. Grace stood at the kitchen sink, staring out at the city lights through the drizzle. In her pocket, her phone buzzed. A new email from Adrian Cole. "We need to talk. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. She closed her eyes, exhaled, and whispered to no one. "I can't keep running forever, can I?" Outside, the rain started again, steady and relentless, as if Seattle itself already knew the answer. The next morning, Grace arrived before the sun. The office was empty, the kind of quiet that hums in your bones. She sat at her desk, pretending to read emails. The cursor blinked on a blank screen, an impatient heartbeat. Outside, Seattle was waking, cranes lifting through fog, buses sighing at every stop. Inside, Grace rehearsed the same lie she'd been living for 10 years. "You're fine. You're invisible. This is just a job." At 8:58. Her phone lit up. "Cole, Adrian, 9 o'clock. Bring the audit file." Her throat tightened. She grabbed the folder she didn't need and made her way upstairs. His door was open this time. He stood by the window again, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbows, sunlight struggling to break through the clouds behind him. When he looked up, his expression was unreadable. "Come in," he said. She stepped inside, closing the door quietly. "You wanted the audit file," she said, her voice steady but low. He gestured toward the chair. "Sit down, Grace." She hesitated. "I can stand. You always hated being told what to do," he murmured. "That hasn't changed." Her jaw tightened. "Neither have you." A faint smile ghosted across his face. "Touché." For a moment, silence filled the glass office. The hum of the city below sounded like rain against the windows. He finally said, "You disappeared. 10 years, no word, nothing. And now you're sitting in my office." "I didn't plan it," she said. He tilted his head slightly. "You think I believe in coincidence?" "I think you believe in control," she replied. "There's a difference." His gaze lingered on her, not angry, just searching. "You're still good with words." "Comes with surviving," she said quietly. He leaned back in his chair, eyes softening. "Montana feels like another life, doesn't it?" She didn't answer. The word Montana was a ghost. The cabin by the lake, the smell of pine, his hand in hers under the sound of thunder. He continued, voice lower now. "After you left, I went back once. The cabin was gone. Burned down in the fire that summer." Grace looked down. "I heard." "So you were keeping track," he said. Her silence was answer enough. He opened a drawer, pulled out a small object, and set it on the desk. A silver lighter, old, scratched. She recognized it instantly. "You left this," he said. Her fingers trembled. "You kept it." "I kept a lot of things," he said. "Things that didn't make sense to keep. A letter, for one." Her eyes snapped up. "A letter." He nodded. "Found it in my old office years ago. No name, no address. Just handwriting I thought was yours." Her stomach turned. "What did it say?" He looked at her. "That you were sorry. That you hoped I'd stop waiting." Grace swallowed. "That wasn't me. I know," he said. Now, he slid the lighter back across the desk, and for a moment their hands almost touched. "Why are you really here?" he asked. "I told you," she said. "Work. You don't take a job like this for the salary." She looked away. "You don't know what I take anymore." His voice softened. "Then tell me," but she couldn't. The words were too heavy. "There's a boy with your eyes who asks me why we don't have family photos. Instead," she said, "I think this conversation's over." He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "Grace," she stood, forcing composure. "Whatever history we had, it's over. We work together now. Let's keep it that way." He didn't stop her when she turned to leave, but his voice followed her like an echo. "You're lying." She froze. "Excuse me." He stood slowly. "You're not the same woman who left me, but you're not the stranger you pretend to be either. So tell me what changed." She turned halfway toward him. "Everything," she said softly. "Everything changed." And she walked out before the tremor in her voice could betray her. By noon, the office was buzzing again. Phones ringing, printers humming, footsteps rushing past. Grace sat at her desk, staring at her reflection in the dark screen. Her hands were steady now, but her heartbeat wasn't. She opened a blank email, typed 2 words, then deleted them. "Don't ask," then again. "I'm sorry." She erased it once more, locked her screen, and pressed her palms together until the shaking stopped. That night, she found Theo asleep on the couch again, a sketchbook on his chest. She turned the page gently, smiling at his messy handwriting at the bottom of the page. Under a drawing of 2 stick figures standing in the rain, he'd written, "Sometimes people get lost, but rain helps them find the way back." Her throat ached. She leaned down, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Maybe you're right, sweetheart." Outside, rain tapped softly against the window, steady, patient, endless. And somewhere in the city, in a glass office high above the streets, a man sat alone, unlocking a safe. Inside lay a single envelope, yellowed at the edges, sealed but never opened. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Grace stepped out, clutching a stack of files to her chest like a shield. It had been 3 days since that morning in Adrian's office. They hadn't spoken, again not directly. But silence in a place like this was never just silence. People noticed. They always did. Morning, Grace. Sophie smiled from the hallway, a travel mug in hand. Busy week, huh? The Cole account review's a beast. Grace returned the smile. I've seen worse. Careful, Sophie warned. You say that, and they'll assign you to the client audit. Too late, Grace said lightly. Already did, Sophie groaned. God help you. Mr. Cole doesn't like mistakes. Grace's smile faltered. Yeah, I remember. The meeting room on the top floor was all glass and crumbed and warmth, no clutter. The kind of room built for people who didn't need to be reminded of where they stood. Grace took a seat near the far end, setting her notebook down carefully. The rest of the audit team filtered in analysts, assistants, a few nervous interns, and then, exactly on time, Adrian entered dark suit. Calm, stride. A man used to rooms that fell quiet for him. He didn't glance at her right away, but she felt the pull of his presence as surely as if gravity itself had shifted. Let's begin, he said, his voice even. Measured, he walked them through the project-to-merger audit involving a Montana property, of all places. The word hit her like static. Montana, he said again, pointing to the slide. The old Astor Lake site. It's being redeveloped into an Western Capital owns the stake. Her pen froze mid-note. That lake. Those trees. The same place they had once called home. She forced herself to look up. He was facing the screen, but she could tell he knew. His tone didn't change, but his eyes flicked toward her, brief as a heartbeat. The paperwork from 10 years ago is complicated, he said. Old contracts, handwritten notes, missing signatures. We'll need full transcription. He looked straight at her then. Ms. Harlow, that'll be your responsibility. Her mouth went dry. Understood, she managed. Good. He turned away, but the echo of his gaze lingered long after. After the meeting, Grace lingered behind as the others left. She gathered the loose papers, aligning their edges, buying herself seconds. Montana, she said quietly. Adrian looked up from his laptop. Business has a sense of humor, or cruelty, sometimes both. The tension between them wasn't sharp anymore. It was slow, like a tide pulling them backward through time. He closed his laptop, stood, and moved toward her. You still don't like looking back? It's not my hobby, she said, forcing a half-smile. You can't avoid it forever. Watch me. He gave a small, tired laugh. You were always stubborn, and you were always impossible, she said. Maybe that's why we worked, he murmured. Worked. She echoed. We broke. He hesitated, studying her face. You still wear it, he said softly. She frowned. Wear what? The locket. Her hand went automatically to her collar. The silver chain glinted beneath the fabric. Old habit. Habits mean something, he said. Not always. Sometimes they're just what's left. He stepped closer, just enough for her to catch the faint scent of cedar and rain the same as 10 years ago. Grace, she cut him off. Don't. He froze. The silence between them thickened, filled with all the things neither could say. Later that afternoon, she sat alone in the copy room, scanning documents. The hum of the machine filled the air, steady, relentless. Each contract bore dates and signatures from a decade ago, her eyes catching on the same names as to Holdings. Western Capital, Coal Industries, .1 file. Older than the rest, slipped free from the folder and fell open. Inside, a handwritten note in blue ink, for him. She said he'd understand someday. Grace's chest tightened. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Emily Weston, her old friend. Adrian's ex-wife, the woman who had once stood on her porch in Montana the night everything fell apart. Pressing money into her hand, saying, go. He'll find out eventually. But not now. Grace shut the folder, pulse racing. If Emily had written that note, Then, what else had she left behind? When she returned to her desk, she found an envelope waiting. No name, just her initials in careful ink. Inside, a single sheet of paper. The past doesn't stay buried, Grace. Not in this building. Her breath caught. No signature. She looked round the office, buzzed as usual, screens glowing, people typing, laughing, unaware. But someone knew. Someone was watching. That evening, she picked up Theo from art class. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, paint on his hands. "Mum." He grinned. "Guess what we painted today?" "What?" "A safe." He held up the canvas-on abstract swirl of blues and silvers. "Teacher said we had to paint something that keeps secrets." Grace froze for a moment, then forced a smile. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." He squinted. "Why do you look sad?" "I'm not," she lied. "Just proud." But as they walked home in the drizzle, her mind spun with questions she wasn't ready to ask. A safe, a letter, a building full of ghosts. Somehow, the past had found its way to Seattle after all. The building was quiet after hours. Most of the staff had gone home, leaving behind the hum of lights and the faint rhythm of rain on glass. Grace sat at her desk, the envelope from earlier lying open beside her keyboard. She'd read the note a dozen times. The past doesn't stay buried, Grace. Not in this building, no signature, no mark. Just neat, slanted handwriting, too careful to be random. She picked up the paper, tilting it toward the light. There was something faint in the corner, almost a erased and indentation from a previous page. She whispered to herself, "Who are you?" She slipped the note into her drawer, locked it, and headed upstairs. Her pulse thudded in her throat. The executive floor was empty, dark hallways, glass walls reflecting her silhouette at the end of the corridor. Adrian's office light was still on. She hesitated, listening. No sound. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, the room smelled faintly of cedar and paper. A single lamp cast a warm circle across his desk. And there it was, the safe, black steel. Combination dial, the same one she'd seen years ago in his apartment, when he'd called it the only thing I trust more than people. Her hand hovered over it. She didn't even know why she'd come. Curiosity, guilt, fear, maybe all three. The door clicked open behind her, looking for something. Grace froze. Adrian stood there, coat over one arm, expression unreadable. He didn't sound angry, just tired. The kind of tired that meant he'd already guessed why she was there. She turned slowly. "I thought you'd left." "I was about to," he said, setting his keys on the table. Then I remembered the safe wasn't locked properly. Her throat tightened. "I wasn't going to open it." He stepped closer. "Grace, if you're going to lie, at least make it believable." She exhaled shakily. "You think I came here to steal something?" "I think you came here for answers." He moved behind the desk, resting a hand on the safe. "Do you want to see what's inside?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "No," he smiled faintly. "You used to be braver." "I used to be someone else," she said. He studied her for a long moment, then knelt, turning the dial. The lock clicked open with a dull metallic sound. He pulled out a folder and a single envelope buloed, edges worn. "This," he said, holding it out, "is what I've kept for 10 years. She didn't take it. "Why show me now?" "Because you were going to find it anyway," he said. "And because I'm done wondering if it was yours." She finally reached for it, hands trembling. Her eyes scanned the handwriting across the front slanted cursive, faintly smudged. Not hers, but familiar. It was Emily Weston's. She looked up. "Where did you get this?" He leaned back against the desk. "A month after you left. It was in my old office safe when I moved buildings. I thought you'd written it. I read it 100 times, trying to find a reason you'd go." "What does it say?" He hesitated. You should read it. Grace unfolded the letter carefully. The paper was brittle, like it might fall apart if handled too hard. Adrian, if she ever finds her way back to you, let her speak first. Don't ask what happened. Don't try to fix it. Just listen. We both know some wounds only close in silence. Grace's breath caught. She knew. He nodded. Emily always knew more than she said. Grace folded the letter back up, her hands shaking. Why would she write this? Why leave it for you? Adrian's gaze softened. I've asked myself that for years. Maybe she pitied me. Maybe she pitied you. She helped me, Grace said quietly. The night I left. She gave me money, told me to disappear. He didn't flinch. Then she saved us both. The room fell silent, the weight of old choices pressing between them. Finally, she said, she wrote another note. In the Astor Lake files. He looked up sharply. What note? Something about me, Grace said. About you understanding someday. Adrian frowned, crossing to his desk. Let me see it. She shook her head. I can't. Someone already took it. What do you mean? It was gone when I came back from lunch. He stared at her, the calm slipping from his voice. Who else knows about Montana? I don't know, she said. But someone's watching. He moved to the window, running a hand through his hair. This building has too many ghosts. Maybe not ghosts, she said softly. Maybe just unfinished stories. He turned toward her. And ours. She met his eyes. Still unfinished. For the first time. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like the man she once knew, the one who used to make coffee too strong, who danced barefoot on the cabin floor, who believed forever was possible. Grace, he said quietly. What are you afraid of? She almost told him. About Theo. About the boy with his eyes. But the words stuck in her throat. Everything, she whispered instead. When she left the office, the rain had turned into a downpour. She pulled her coat tighter, stepping into the storm. Every streetlight shimmered through water, blurring the world into gold and grey dot at home. Theo was awake, sketching again. Can I show you something? He said, holding up a page. It was another drawing, a small house by a lake, smoke rising from the chimney. Two people stood in front of it, holding hands. Where did you see this? She asked. He shrugged. I don't know. I just remember it. Her breath caught. He'd never been there, but she had. And so had his father. That night, Grace lay awake, listening to the rain drum against the window. In her mind, she saw the safe, the letter. The signature Emily Weston was gone, but her words still lived between them, pulling them toward a truth Grace wasn't ready to face. She turned on her side, staring at the clock. 1:14 a.m. Her phone buzzed. Adrian Cole. They broke into my office tonight. The letter's gone. I think whoever's been watching us isn't done yet. Seattle didn't sleep that night. Rain pressed hard against the windows of Cole and Weston's upper floors. A sound like restless memory. Adrian sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, the soft glow of his computer casting lines of fatigue across his face. The security footage replayed on a loop, a shadow slipping through the hall, a hand forcing the lock on his office door, and then the frame freezing at static. The letter was gone. He leaned back, eyes burning. You kept it for 10 years, he muttered, and they took it in one night. Across town, Grace stared at her phone long after his message stopped glowing on the screen. They broke into my office tonight. The letter's gone. I think whoever's been watching us isn't done yet. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed back, Are you safe? A pause, then his reply, For now. But I don't think this is about the letter anymore. She exhaled, locking her phone. The rain outside hit the window harder, as if trying to warn her. She turned toward Theo's room, his small figure curled beneath blankets, breathing evenly, safe in a world that had no idea how fragile safety could be. Grace whispered, "You don't deserve any of this, sweetheart." And then, quietly, to herself, "Neither do one." The next morning, the office was tense. Whispers passed between desks like current through wire. Someone had broken into the CEO's office. Someone had taken something. Grace tried to act normal, but every phone ring made her flinch. Sophie appeared by her desk, mid-morning, coffee in hand. "Hey, you okay?" Grace forced a smile. "Fine, why?" Sophie lowered her voice. "They're saying it wasn't a break-in. The system didn't log an external entry. Whoever did it used an employee badge." Grace's chest tightened. "Do they know who's—" Sophie shrugged. "No one's saying, but IT's checking all access cards." She leaned closer. "You were here late, weren't you?" Grace blinked. "Yeah, I was finishing the audit reports." Then they'll see that Sophie smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry." But worry was all Grace could do. By noon, she was called upstairs. Adrian's assistant met her at the elevator. "Mr. Cole wants you in his office." Grace's heart pounded as she walked the familiar hallway. The same glass walls, the same sterile quiet when she entered. Adrian was pacing, phone pressed to his ear. He ended the call quickly when he saw her. "Close the door," he said. She obeyed, trying to read his expression. "I told you about the break-in," he began. Security checked the access logs. Only 2 people entered this floor after midnight. Grace's breath caught. "Who? Me?" He paused. "And you?" For a moment, the words didn't make sense. Then they did. "Too well. That's not possible," she said, shaking her head. "I left before 9. He studied her. "Your card scanned in again at 12:07 a.m. Then it was cloned," she snapped. "You think I don't know what to think," he said, his voice quieter now. "But whoever took that letter knew exactly where to look." Grace met his eyes. "So you think that's me?" He didn't answer. Her pulse hammered in her ears. "You know me better than that, Adrian, do I?" he said softly. That hurt more than accusation. She turned toward the window, blinking hard. "I didn't take your damn letter." "I want to believe you," he said. "But we both know the past keeps following you. Maybe it's finally caught up." She spun around. "You don't get to say that." He stepped closer. "Then tell me what you're hiding." Her throat tightened. "Nothing." He looked at her for a long moment, searching her face. Then, quieter, "You were always a terrible liar, Grace." She exhaled shakily. "So were you." The intercom buzzed, the assistant's voice cutting through the tension. "Mr. Cole, Detective Rivera from SPD is here to see you." Adrian pressed the button. "Send him in." Grace turned sharply. "You called the police." "Standard procedure," he said. The detective entered mid-40s, trench coat still damp from rain, eyes sharp. He introduced himself, shook Adrian's hand, then looked at Grace. "Ms. Harlow, we may need to ask you some questions too." She nodded numbly. They went over the timeline. "The footage. The missing document. It's possible someone copied your credentials," Rivera said. "But the card scan matches your ID chip, not a clone. We'll keep digging." Grace's voice was thin. "What happens now?" "We look into internal access," the detective said. "And Mr. Coliff, that letter was important. You'll need to describe it." Adrian hesitated. It was personal. Personal enough for someone to break in. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Maybe." Rivera looked between them, reading the unspoken tension. Personal and valuable are usually the same thing. He closed his notebook. We'll be in touch." When he left, silence fell heavy as rain clouds. Adrian sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. Grace stood by the window, heart pounding. "Finally," she said, "you should have told them it wasn't mine." He looked up. "It wouldn't have mattered." "Yes, it would have," she said, her voice trembling. "You think you're protecting me, but you're not. You're just making me the easiest suspect. You think I'd let them blame you?" he said sharply. "After everything." "You already are," she whispered. They stared at each other, two people on opposite sides of the same wound. "Why does it always end like this?" she asked softly. "Because we never finished it," he said. For a moment, they were back in Montana, her standing in the doorway, rain in her hair, suitcase in hand. His voice breaking as he asked, "Why are you leaving?" Her silence then, the same as now. And then, just like that night, she turned and walked away. That evening, she found an envelope on her doorstep, her name on the front. Inside, a single page torn from a contract. At the bottom corner, Adrian's initials, and below them, in handwriting not his, "You can't keep hiding him forever." Her fingers went cold. She looked through the rain-streaked window toward the city lights. Whoever was behind this wasn't after money or power. They were after her secret. The storm didn't stop for 2 days. Seattle felt smaller under the rain, streets blurred, the skyline dissolving into gray. Inside the Cole and Western Tower, everything carried that same tension. Quiet but electric. Grace worked mechanically, fingers typing, eyes unfocused. Every time the printer whirred or someone dropped a pen, her body flinched. The words on the screen swam together until they stopped meaning anything at all. She told herself it was just exhaustion, but really it was fear. Fear of the letter, of whoever knew her secret, and of the man she could no longer avoid. Late afternoon, a soft knock came at her cubicle wall. Adrian. He wasn't in his usual suit. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled, rain in his hair. It made him look younger and more dangerous to her composure. "Can we talk?" he asked. Grace hesitated. "Shouldn't you be with security? They're done for now." He paused. "Please, Grace." She stood slowly. "Conference room." He nodded. The walk there was silent, the kind of silence that feels like gravity inside. The glass walls gleamed with rainlight. Adrian set a thin folder on the table and slid it toward her. "I went through the audit files again," he said. "The ones from Montana." Her stomach clenched. "Why?" "Because whoever took that letter knew exactly what they were after." He tapped the folder. "This was mixed in with your documentation. You didn't file it." Grace frowned, opening the folder. It was an old printout, a scanned photo from a decade ago. The image was faded, edges water-stained. A small cabin by a lake. The mountains blurred behind fog in front of it. 2 people stood him, and her, and between them a small child, maybe 3 years old, wearing a red raincoat, holding her hand, her throat closed. "That's not possible," she whispered. Adrian's gaze never left her. "Isn't it?" She shook her head, gripping the table. "That picture was never taken." "Then how do you explain it?" he said. "Your face, my jacket, the cabin, and that kid." He stopped. His voice cracked on the word kid. Grace forced herself to look. The little boy's eyes were wide, curious, blue-gray, the exact color of Adrian's. Her voice trembled. "It's edited." "It has to be. Who would edit it?" He asked why. Grace turned away, heart pounding. "Someone's trying to manipulate us." "You said it yourself. Whoever broke in wants something personal." Adrian stepped closer. "And you think they just happened to find this? You think this is coincidence?" "Yes," she said quickly. "No." His voice hardened. "I think it's a message." She faced him. "A message about what?" He stared at her for a long time, eyes cold, searching. About what you never told me. The air between them tightened. He was close enough now that she could smell the rain on him, hear the steadiness in his breath, everything about him still familiar, still dangerous. "Grace," he said quietly. "Who is that child?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. She wanted to lie. She almost did, but the words stuck like stones in her throat. Finally, she said, "It doesn't matter. The hell it doesn't. It's not your concern." He laughed once, bitter, low. "You don't get to decide that anymore." Grace took a step back. "You think you want the truth, but you don't." He followed her gaze. "Try me." Outside the glass, the storm cracked open, lightning flashing across the skyline. Grace flinched, pressing her palms to the table. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I left for a reason, then tell me what it was." "I couldn't stay." "Why?" "Because staying would have destroyed you." He stared at her, voice barely above a whisper. "You already did." Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then he turned away, hand pressed to the glass, his reflection fractured by the rain. "When you left," he said quietly, "I spent years asking what I did wrong. I tried to build something out of what you left behind. But now," he looked back at her, "now I think you left to hide something, not to escape me." Grace said nothing. Her silence told him more than any confession could. He stepped closer again, voice trembling now. "Is he mine?" Her eyes closed. She wished she could lie again. But there was no point when she spoke. It was barely a whisper. Yes, the sound that came from him wasn't anger. Not exactly. It was disbelief, relief, a breaking thing. He stumbled back, running a hand through his hair. "How long?" 8 years, she said. "He's 8. Adrian's voice cracked. 8 years. And you never told me." "I couldn't. Why the hell not?" She swallowed hard. "Because Emily was dying. Because she begged me not to." He froze. "Emily." She knew, Grace whispered. She knew about him. "She told me to leave before you found out. She said you were already breaking, and another truth would kill you." Adrian's face went pale. The thunder outside shook the glass, but neither of them moved. After a long moment, he said, "You let me mourn a child that was never born while mine was out there alive." Tears burned her eyes. "I didn't let you. I tried to protect you. From what? From being a father. From losing everything else you had left." The words hung between them like a wound that couldn't close. Adrian turned away, fists trembling. "Where is he?" She didn't answer. He spun back. "Where is my son, Grace?" She whispered, "Safe. Safe isn't enough." Her eyes met his, fierce now, despite the tears. "You think I don't know that? Every day I look at him and see you, your eyes, your stubbornness, your quiet. You think I don't remember what I took from you." He took a breath, then another, voice raw. "Then give me back what's mine." Her voice broke. "He's not something you can claim like a company, Adrian. He's a child. He's my son." He closed his eyes. "Our son." The words were soft, but they cut deep. She didn't reply. "Couldn't he?" finally said. "I want to see him." Grace's throat ached. "Not yet. Then, when? When I know it won't destroy him." Adrian stepped closer. "You don't get to decide that alone anymore." The door opened suddenly. Sophie stood there, pale, holding a file. "I'm sorry, I didn't." She froze, sensing the air. "They found something." Grace turned. "What?" Sophie looked between them. The security team recovered a deleted message from the intruder's login. It was sent to an external account. "What message?" Adrian asked. Sophie hesitated. "Just one line." She handed him the printed copy. "He deserves to know the truth." before it's too late. The plane cut through grey clouds, descending over Montana's endless pines. Through the window, Grace saw the familiar landscape unfold, mist rolling over the lake. The faint outline of mountains, she thought, she'd never see again. 8 years since she'd left this place in the dark, with a suitcase in one hand and a sleeping child in the other. Now, she was coming back, not for love, not for closure, but because the past refused to stay buried. Adrian sat in the seat beside her, silent. His hands were clasped, knuckles white. Neither had spoken much since Seattle. Every word felt like it could set off another explosion. When the plane touched down, Grace whispered, "You didn't have to come." He turned to her. "Yes, I did." The rental car hummed down the narrow mountain road, rain tapping the windshield. They drove past stretches of pine and open field, through ghost towns and abandoned diners. Adrian watched the passing scenery, jaw tight. "Montana hasn't changed much," he said. Grace kept her eyes on the road. "Places like this don't change. Only people do." He gave a dry laugh. "And we?" She didn't answer. The wipers swept across the glass, smearing rain into silver lines. When they reached the edge of Astor Lake, the sky had turned the color of lead. The cabin was still there, rebuilt, smaller, rougher, but standing. Its reflection rippled on the water, trembling with each gust of wind. Adrian stepped out first, staring at it. "You rebuilt it." "I had to sell it years ago," Grace said softly. "But I came back once, to make sure it was still here." "Why?" "Because part of me still lived here." They entered the cabin quietly. The air smelled of dust and pine. The walls bore faint smoke stains, remnants of the fire that had gutted the original. Grace ran a hand along the wooden frame of the door, remembering another life, laughter, coffee, the smell of paint. His hand warm on hers. "This was our first winter," he said, eyes on the hearth. "You burned everything but the wedding photos." She smiled faintly. "You said the smoke made the house smell like memories. And you said that was the stupidest thing you'd ever heard. I still think it is." He laughed, low, almost reluctant. "Maybe, but you smiled when I said it." They fell into silence again, the kind that hums with old ghosts. Adrian opened the windows, letting in the scent of rain. His shoulders eased slightly. Grace sat at the small table. Unfolding the folder, they'd brought copies of the missing documents, security notes, Emily's handwriting samples. The last one made her fingers tremble. "Do you really think Emily sent those messages?" she asked. Adrian shook his head. "No. But someone who knew her did. She's been gone for 5 years." He nodded. "And yet everything we're finding leads back to her." Grace's voice softened. "She didn't deserve what happened." "No," he said. "None of us did." A sharp wind rattled the windows. Grace looked up just as Adrian found something in the corner of the cabin. An old chest, its hinges rusted. "This wasn't here before," he murmured. He knelt, forcing the latch open. Inside, a stack of papers, water-warped, and a small tin box. He handed it to her. "You should open it." Grace hesitated, then lifted the lid. Inside was a folded letter, sealed but never sent. Her breath caught when she recognized the handwriting. "Emily's, Grace. If you're reading this, it means the truth finally caught up. He deserved to know, I just couldn't be the one to tell him. I saw the way you looked at him, even when you tried not to. I saw how much you loved him, and I saw how much it broke you to leave. I don't blame you. I just hope you understand that secrets always cost more the longer they're kept. Tell him before someone else does." Grace's eyes blurred. She knew everything. Adrian stood behind her, voice tight. "When did she write that?" "Before she died," Grace whispered. "She must have hidden it here." Adrian sank into the chair across from her. The candlelight flickered between them, catching the pain etched on his face. "All this time," he said, "all this time, she was trying to protect both of us. And we thought she was the one who betrayed us." Grace reached for the letter, her voice breaking. "We were all just trying to survive." The thunder outside cracked, loud and close. Adrian rose, pacing. "Whoever's been sending those messages, they knew about this cabin, about the fire, about the letters." Grace looked up. "You think it's someone connected to Emily, or someone who wants to finish what she started?" A knock echoed through the cabin. Both froze. It came again, slow, deliberate. Grace's heart raced. No one knew we were coming. Adrian moved toward the door, but she caught his arm. "Wait," he glanced at her. "Stay behind me." When he opened the door, the stormlight spilled in, and there, standing on the porch, soaked to the bone, was Detective Rivera. "Sorry to show up unannounced," Rivera said, his voice half drowned by wind. "But I think you two need to see this." He stepped inside, holding out a sealed evidence bag. Inside it, a torn corner of a photograph. Grace's stomach dropped. It was the same picture from the audit files. But now the rest of the image was visible. Behind them, by the cabin's shadow, stood a fourth figure, Emily Weston. And she was holding something in her hand, a phone. Mid-dash recording. The wind slammed against the cabin walls, rattling the windows like bones. Rivera set the evidence bag on the table, water dripping from his coat. Adrian stood beside him, jaw tight. Grace hovered near the fire, pale, her fingers clutching the edge of the table. "What is this?" she asked, voice barely audible. Rivera unzipped the bag carefully and pulled out a flash drive. "We recovered it from an old Western Capitol archive server. Someone tried to erase it years ago, but fragments survived. It was buried in a deleted personal folder." He met Grace's eyes. The folder belonged to Emily Weston. Adrian's breath hitched. "You're sure?" Rivera nodded. "And you need to see what's on it." He plugged the drive into his tablet. Static, first, white noise and distortion. Then the image flickered to life. The camera shook slightly, rain streaking across the lens. It was nighttime. A familiar cabin loomed in the background, this cabin. Before the fire, Emily's voice broke through the wind. "If anyone finds this, I don't know how much time I have left." Grace pressed a hand to her mouth. Adrian didn't move. His eyes were locked on the screen. Emily turned the camera toward herself. Her hair was wet, her face pale but calm. "They think I don't know," she said. "But I do. The fire wasn't an accident. The deals weren't accidents. Western Capital isn't what it looks like." She paused, looking past the camera toward the cabin. "Grace, if you're watching this, I know what you're carrying." And Adrian, her voice cracked, "He deserves to know, but not yet. Not until you're both ready." Then, a noise behind her, heavy footsteps, muffled voices. Emily turned sharply, fear flashing in her eyes. She whispered something the mic barely caught. "He's here." The camera fell. For a moment, all they saw were boots crossing the frame, shadows, and the sound of splintering wood. Then darkness, the screen froze on a single frame. Emily's reflection in a rain puddle, distorted but unmistakable. Her lips formed one word. Adrian leaned closer, whispering, "What did she say?" Rivera replayed the clip, slowed it down. Grace's stomach twisted as the image sharpened. Emily's lips, trembling, formed the word again, "Cole." The silence after was unbearable. The fire crackled. The storm screamed outside. Grace stared at Adrian. "She wasn't talking about you." He didn't answer. His face had gone rigid, pale. Rivera watched them both carefully. "Do you know anyone else named Cole?" "Someone connected to the company, maybe family." Adrian shook his head. No, my father's dead. My brother's been gone for 15 years. Gone? Rivera asked. He left, Adrian said quietly. Disappeared after the lawsuit. He wanted nothing to do with the company. Grace's brow furrowed. I didn't know you had a brother. Adrian's eyes darkened. You weren't the only one keeping secrets. Rivera turned the tablet off and slipped it back into his bag. Whoever Emily was talking about, Cole, or someone she believed was Cole, probably had motive. She connected the dots between Western Capital's accounting and the Astor Lake fire, and she paid for it. Grace whispered, You think she was murdered? Rivera met her gaze. I think someone made sure she couldn't talk. Outside, thunder rolled over the mountains like a warning. Later, after Rivera left to make calls, the cabin fell into stillness again. Adrian stood by the window, staring out at the lake. The reflection of lightning flashed across his face, carving deep lines of exhaustion. Grace approached quietly. You okay? He didn't turn. She said my name. She said Cole, Grace corrected softly. Not Adrian, he exhaled, shaking his head. Maybe she meant both. You didn't do this, Grace said. You'd never. He turned, eyes haunted. You don't know what I've done. Grace blinked. What do you mean? I built Western Capital out of the ashes of her family's company. I signed every deal she warned me against. When the fire happened, I let the insurance write it off as an accident. And then she died, and I didn't ask enough questions. Because you didn't know, Grace said. That's not guilt. It feels like it, he whispered. He walked closer, voice rough. And now there's a kid out there who carries my name and my mistakes. You really think I can walk away again? Grace's voice broke. He's not your redemption, Adrian. Then what is? He said, almost pleading. She looked at him, tears gathering. Telling him the truth before someone else does. He reached for her hand, then, hesitantly, like a man remembering how. For a moment, she didn't pull away. Outside, the storm softened, a lull before dawn. Where is he? He asked quietly. Grace hesitated. Back in Seattle. With my sister, I need to see him. She shook her head. He doesn't know you exist. He's 8. All he knows is that his father died before he was born. Adrian flinched, like she'd struck him. You told him I was dead. I told him there was nothing left to find, she whispered, and I believed that. Until now. He released her hand and stepped back, breathing hard. The rain had slowed to a soft mist, the world turning grey again. Grace wiped her eyes. Emily wanted to protect us, but she also wanted the truth to come out. Maybe this is how we finish it. He looked at her, jaw set. We find who did this. We find who used her, who sent those messages, and then we tell him everything. Grace swallowed. And if he hates you for it? Adrian's eyes softened. Then at least he'll know I tried. The fire had burned low. Grace took the letter Emily left and tucked it into her coat pocket. We'll go back tomorrow, she said. Rivera's right, this isn't over. Adrian nodded, his voice barely audible. It never was. As they stepped outside, the storm broke for the first time. The lake lay still, its surface reflecting the grey light of dawn. Grace turned once, looking back at the cabin. For a second, she could swear she saw a shadow move inside, a flicker of a figure near the window. Gone in an instant, she exhaled, clutching her coat tighter. Let's go, she said. Behind them, the waves rippled, and in their reflection, a faint shape lingered on the glass. Emily's face, half lit, half vanished in rainlight. Seattle welcomed them back with more rain, finer, colder, relentless. The city's skyline shimmered under low clouds, its glass towers looking almost kind compared to Montana's mountains. But Grace felt heavier than when she left. The storm had passed. Yet it had left its mark, a new kind of silence between her and Adrian. They didn't talk much on the drive from the airport. The radio hummed quietly, static, then old songs, then silence again. Every few miles, she caught him glancing at her. She pretended not to notice. By the time they reached her apartment building, the rain had turned into mist. Adrian parked at the curb. "You still live here?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Same place since the divorce. It's safe." "Safe," he echoed, looking up at the cracked brick facade, the flickering hallway light visible through the window. "That's what you've been calling survival all these years." Grace turned to him. "It's what I had to do." Neither said anything for a long moment. Then she said, quietly, "He's upstairs." "With my sister?" Adrian's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "What's his name?" Grace hesitated. Theodore, he said under his breath, as if testing the sound of it. "You named him after my grandfather." "It wasn't for you," she said quickly. Then softer, "It was for what I wanted him to remember." The elevator creaked as they ascended. Grace's heart pounded. She'd rehearsed this moment for years, and yet, now that it was here, every version of it felt wrong. At her door, she paused. "Let me go in first." Adrian nodded. His hands were shaking, though he hid it well. Grace opened the door. The warmth of home washed over her, the smell of coffee, crayons, something baking. Her sister Naomi looked up from the kitchen. Her eyes widened when she saw the man behind Grace. "Is that—" Grace nodded. Naomi swallowed, wiped her hands on a towel. "Theo's in his room. He's been waiting for you." Adrian's jaw flexed. Waiting. He hadn't realized how much that single word could hurt. Grace stepped into the small room at the end of the hall. Theo was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by Legos and open sketchbooks. His head snapped up when he saw her. "Mum, you're back." He ran to hug her, arms tight around her waist. "Hey buddy," she whispered, kissing his hair. "I missed you." He pulled back, grinning. "Did you go to the mountains? Did you see the lake again?" Her voice faltered. "Yeah, I did." He tilted his head. "Was it the same?" "No," she said softly. "It wasn't." Behind her, Adrian stood in the doorway, silent. Theo noticed him then, eyes curious, cautious. "Mum," he whispered, "who's that?" Grace knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. "This is Adrian," she said slowly. "He's an old friend of mine." Adrian's voice was quiet. "Hi, Theo." The boy stared at him for a moment. Then, shyly, "Hi." He looked back at his mother. "He talks like you do." Grace smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why we were friends." Theo grinned. "Do you draw too, Mr. Adrian?" Adrian's lips twitched into something like a smile. "Not very well, but I'd like to see yours." Theo ran to grab his sketchbook. Grace stood, heart aching at the sight of them, to people who didn't know they were looking at themselves. Naomi lingered in the hallway, whispering, "Are you sure about this?" Grace whispered back, "No." "Then why?" "Because it's time." Naomi looked at Adrian, at the way he knelt on the floor, listening intently as Theo explained his drawings, the lake, the cabin, a woman in the rain. "God," Naomi murmured. "He looks like him." Grace's voice broke. "I know." After dinner, Theo fell asleep on the couch, sketchbook still open on his chest. Adrian stood over him, eyes glassy, one hand hovering in the air as if afraid to touch. Grace watched from the kitchen doorway. "You can," she said softly. "He won't wake." Adrian knelt, brushing a thumb lightly across the boy's hair. "He has your nose," he whispered. Grace's smile was sad. "And your temper." He looked up at her. "Does he know?" She shook her head. "Not yet," he exhaled. When I know he's ready. And when will you be? She hesitated. Never. Later, when Naomi had gone to bed, Grace and Adrian stood on the balcony, the city glowing beneath them. Steam rose from the wet streets, and the hum of late traffic filled the silence between them. Adrian lit a cigarette, an old habit resurrected. Rivera called, he said quietly. The forensics confirmed it. Emily's video was authentic. Grace's arms crossed, which means someone in Western Capital knew about the fire. He nodded, and they've been covering it up ever since. She turned to him. What are you going to do? Expose it, he said. All of it. My name, my company, my father's legacy. I'll burn it down if I have to. Grace stared at him. You'll destroy yourself. He looked out over the city. Maybe that's the only way to stop this. She sighed, voice trembling. And what about Theo? Adrian flicked ash into the rain. He deserves a father who isn't running from ghosts. Her throat tightened. You don't even know how to be one. He turned, eyes meeting hers. Then teach me. Grace froze. The city hum faded, replaced by the sound of her own heartbeat. I don't know if I can forgive you, she whispered. I'm not asking for that, he said. I'm asking for a chance to be better. Her eyes glistened. And if you fail? He took a breath. Then at least he'll know I tried. Thunder rolled faintly in the distance, though the sky over Seattle was calm now. Only drizzle, soft and steady. Grace looked back inside, where Theo slept beneath a blanket. The sketchbook still open to a drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. She whispered, Maybe he already knows. Adrian followed her gaze. For a long time, neither spoke. The rain fell like forgiveness, quiet, persistent, incomplete. It started with the headlines. By sunrise, every business channel in Seattle was saying the same words in sharp, clipped voices. Western Capital under investigation for cover-up in 2017 Astor Lake fire. Grace read it on her phone while Theo poured cereal at the kitchen table, humming a song from school. Her hands trembled so badly she had to set the mug down. Adrian's name was everywhere. Photos of him leaving a courthouse. A quote pulled from an old interview. The truth is good business. Now it looked like irony. Theo looked up. Mum, what's wrong? She smiled tightly. Nothing, honey. Eat your breakfast. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. Downstairs, outside the apartment, reporters already gathered. Flashes popped against the wet grey morning. Grace froze at the door, pulling Theo closer. Ms. Harlow, is it true you worked under Adrian Cole during the audit? Did you know about the missing documents? Is it true you were seen with him in Montana last week? Are you the woman in the Astor Lake photograph? Her vision blurred. We're not answering questions, she said through clenched teeth, dragging Theo toward the car. He clung to her arm, confused. Mom, why are they saying your name? She didn't answer. Couldn't by the time she got him to school, the story had gone national. The radio anchor's voice was calm, professional, detached in the way only news could be when it was about someone else's life. Sources close to the investigation claim a former employee, Grace Harlow, may hold key evidence connecting Western Capital CEO Adrian Cole to the Astor Lake fire. Both individuals were reportedly seen returning from Montana earlier this week. Grace switched it off. Her reflection in the windshield looked like someone she didn't recognize anymore. That afternoon, she found Adrian waiting outside her building, hood up, rain dripping off his coat. You shouldn't be here, she hissed. They're watching, I know, he said. They followed me from the office. Then go, she said. You'll drag us down with you. He stepped closer. It's too late for that. She crossed her arms. You're being reckless. Reckless was keeping quiet, he said. I'm not doing that anymore. Adrian, listen, no Grace. For once, you listen. His voice cracked. You were right. The fire wasn't an accident, and Emily knew. Western Capital has been laundering insurance money for years, through shell subsidiaries, all under my family's name. I found the records this morning. It's worse than I thought. Grace stared at him. And you told the press. I told Rivera. Someone told the press. A car slowed near the curb, unmarked, windows tinted. Adrian's eyes flicked toward it. We need to talk somewhere else. Grace hesitated, then nodded. Theo's at school. I have 2 hours. They drove to the marina, grey water, empty docks, gulls circling over the sound. It was the same place Adrian used to run when he couldn't think straight. He leaned against the rail, hair wet, eyes hollow. They're going to come after you next. Grace swallowed. For what? For knowing me, he said bitterly. For knowing too much. I didn't sign anything, she said. They have no proof. They don't need proof. They need noise. She turned toward him. So what's your plan? I go public, he said. I release everything. The letters, the financials, Emily's video. If I'm going down, I'll take the rot with me. You'll lose everything. I already have. Grace's voice trembled. What about Theo? Adrian looked at her, his expression breaking. He deserves to know his father isn't a coward. He deserves a father who's alive. Their eyes locked, both knowing the truth in both sentences. That night, the rain came harder, washing the city in reflected neon. Grace sat by Theo's bed, watching him sleep. His sketchbook lay open beside him. She traced one of the drawings. 3 figures by a lake again, now joined by a 4th shadow in the background. She whispered, You see more than you should, don't you? Her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. If you don't stop him, he won't live long enough to tell the truth. Her blood ran cold. She looked toward the window. The rain outside felt heavier, darker somehow. She typed back before she could think. Who is this? No reply. The next morning, Adrian didn't show up for the scheduled press conference. Rivera called her. Grace, where is he? She pressed a hand to her forehead. I don't know. He was supposed to meet me 2 hours ago, Rivera said. He left his phone in his office. Grace's heart sank. You think something happened? I think someone's making sure he can't talk. She looked toward Theo's door, her voice barely a whisper. Then we're already too late. She drove without thinking, following instinct, the same way she used to find him years ago when he disappeared into his thoughts. The highway blurred, the rain endless. When she reached the edge of the industrial district, she saw it. Adrian's car, parked crookedly near the waterfront. The driver's door open, the engine still running. She stepped out, heart in her throat. Adrian. No answer. Then she saw it on the passenger seat, a flash drive, and a note written in his familiar hand. For Theo. Tell him the truth, I couldn't finish. Grace's knees went weak. She grabbed the flash drive, scanning the fog for any sign of him. Adrian? She shouted, voice breaking. Adrian? Only the sound of rain answered.